Welcome. Hopefully you can hear us. If maybe somebody can just give a quick little shout out to say, yes, you can hear us and see us. And thank you, Peggy. There's always one in the crowd. Yes, great.
Awesome.
Okay, well, welcome this evening. We are very excited to be here with you. My name is Heather Thompson.
I'm Helen Vlachoyannacos.
And we're here this evening to share a little bit about the Beyond Images grade 4 to 8 curriculum. So we'll jump right in.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay.
So we thought we'd just share a little bit about who we are and why we're sitting here at this computer together. We're excited to be here. We're always very excited to be able to be given the chance to share our passion around.
They can hear us but not see us. Okay, thank you. We'll figure that out.
Okay, it says start sharing.
Maybe it's the.
Good.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Thank you, Debbie, for letting us know. So we're always really excited to share our passion as educators. So I'm Helen of the H squared. Just a little bit there. I don't want to read through the list. I know you have it there, but something I've been teaching 17 years, and something I've always brought with me from day one to today, as exhausted as I feel today, is teaching from a passionate equity stance, a stance of equity and putting students at the center and at the forefront. Their students, their experiences, their families, their community, etc. I teach in the Toronto District School Board in the East End in Scarborough, and currently I am teaching grades 7, 8.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I'm Heather of the other half of H squared. I've been teaching for 20 years now and have had a variety of different roles, both in the classroom, outside the classroom. I actually returned to a classroom position after 15 years this year of being in a number of different other roles in education. And that has been a huge learning experience with me. Probably what has changed my thinking around what goes on in the classroom more so even than some of my own experiences is now being a mom and being a mom of a 3.5-year-old little boy and being very aware of every image that he sees, every word that he hears, and every experience that he has, to know that I want to make sure that his experiences in life are positive and that he's set up with a positive body image and self-esteem from the get-go. So wearing a number of different hats. I've returned to the classroom this year. I'm in the Peel board. And Helen and I were very fortunate to meet 17 years ago when Helen first started teaching, working with the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario on writing and presentation package at the time. And 17 years later, we're still working together whenever NEDIC calls or anybody else.
This is love.
It's actually my longest relationship is with Helen. And anytime we have the opportunity to work together and share our passion for body image and self-esteem, we travel anywhere together. So we're happy that you're taking the time with us this evening, and we'll jump right in.
Yes, and we want to make this hour together informative. Please don't take even our humor or our lightheartedness as taking away from the seriousness and how much we are invested in this topic. In this, I would say, this equity topic that often is forgotten or dismissed or not even considered in the education world, to be honest, and outside as well. So we're really excited to share with you some of our journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to get us started then, we have this little image. And really the question there, why is everyone so obsessed with body image? We see it we see it from the get-go with kids. Research certainly shows that children as young as 2.5, 3 years of age, display preferences for body type, body size. There's all sorts of famous research experiments that have been done where children, rank preference of dolls. And we still see, 50 years later after this experiment being done, that children will still rank the blonde, white, male and female dolls as being the most preferred dolls to play with. And each of the dolls gets ranked from there. And typically, the two last dolls that are always selected are the second last is the doll in the wheelchair, and the last one is the overweight or obese doll. And it starts at a very young age, so we see it from the get-go. And it's a part of media. It's a part of life that our kids are surrounded by, we're surrounded by. And so one of the key elements that brought us to creating the Beyond Images program was how to help our students deal with the multitude of images and the multitude of meanings being thrown at them. How do they make sense of them? How do they critically analyze them? And how do they create kind of a buffer for themselves?
Exactly. And this comic is actually from 1999. I was at university and going through my own negative body image issues, and I was navigating through that, having gone through so much diet after diet and a lot of really negative self-hate, if you will. And while I was at university, I decided to do a project about body image in one of my drama and education classes at York. And so I was collecting a whole bunch of stuff, and this comic, I remember seeing it, I remember crying about it, but then I remember feeling, okay, I'm not alone in this journey. And that was a turnaround, if you will. So I just wanted to share, 99 is a long time ago. And I mean, we could go further back. This is probably a comic that would be around today, definitely, unfortunately still. So, so much to dissect. And just to add to what Heather was saying, really, we want to help. And this curriculum we hope does this, but it was our intention specifically to have students really become critical thinkers, really being able to think. The images are going to be there. They're going to be bombarded. It's a $1 billion diet industry. How do they navigate their way through this world? And how do they become really critical thinkers to think and understand, what does this mean for me? What does this not mean for me? How do I think about this? How do I dissect all of this, etc.? What does it mean for me? So.
Okay. And Sandy, thank you for your question. Yes, we will be providing the presentation after this evening. It will be uploaded. I'm looking to our technical support, and we will provide all that information for you at the end of this evening. But certainly you will have it to be able to access later.
Email?
Okay?
We'll send it by email.
Send it by email. Okay? We will send it out to you by email. So stay tuned. Okay. So probably some of you are familiar with this image, which is really the ABCs of brand names. And this is, it's taken several different forms over the years and formats, depending on how often it's been updated. But, from a young age, we know that students are just saturated by branding. From the get-go. I know my own son from the age of 8 months, despite my better judgment, we started using Treehouse, and he knew the sounds of the chimes when it would change to different shows on there. He knew the image, and now one of the first words that my son has been able to spell is Tim Hortons, because he sees it on the
little Canadian kid.
He sees it on the cups, and he knows the golden arches, and so kids are just surrounded by this from a really young age. And so this has always been a great activity to do with students, is to just get them to see how many they can identify, or actually they can create from their own experiences. But it just speaks to brand imaging and how students really are completely immersed in it. Our kids as young as 2, 3 years of age are seeing this, and then by the time we get into our preteen and our teen years, it is all about branding. It is all about what name, what label is on the clothes, what label's on the shoes, and to be able to get students to start to break down some of these images. What are they seeing? How is it impacting them? How is it changing their thinking, their feeling? Is so important.
The next few slides actually go through some different media tools that we do use in the classroom that are used. And just a little quick note about this slide. I had a professor once talk about, can we really say that any child is illiterate in the sense of their knowledge of environmental print, like these brands, like being able to identify the golden arch, is a form of literacy. And so in the classroom, media literacy is one of the strands in our language curriculum. There are 4: reading, writing, media literacy, and oral communication. And as a strand, that's one of the ways our students come to us already very literate. And so even seeing that, moving away from a deficit thinking and thinking as teachers, how can we use this again to promote critical thinking, to promote whether it be debates or persuasive writing, etc. So the next few slides as well are just some of the different tools that we use.
So we'll take you through those just very quickly.
This one's the 5 core concepts. I really love this I've only really taught in the classroom junior intermediate, but just the questions in this, I would say even our primary teachers can use this with the questions like, what are these core concepts when we look at dissecting media together, when we analyze? And media, really, there's 2 veins in the curriculum for media literacy. There's analysis of media and creation of media. So the kids, and then when I did my media literacy additional qualification years ago, I never thought of this until my course director said this: use what students create to then analyze, so that it's this constant loop, that they're also giving feedback about what has been created as well. But these concepts look at the analysis of media. How do we analyze and look at these core concepts that media messages are constructions? Like, period. There is a reason. I'm sorry to say even, but the H&M ad that we've seen recently, that's a choice. A choice was made. And today I put that ad up in my classroom too, and we talked about, I just put it up and quietly just kind of walked away, and there was this uproar, this sort of conversation, anger even in the class. But that's a construction. That was a construction. And if you look down the core concepts too, there are beliefs and values and how we interpret it. And the intent may have not been negative, but there is a whole society that goes out to, that with very clear messaging, etc. The intent, as we go to number 4, there are social ramifications, if you will, with ads like that. Okay, with Trump. So again, even what he said the other day, which as my blood boils, because I have kids in my classroom who are of Haitian descent, for example. And so even that, there's a construction there. There's a media construction that we need to talk about. And gone are the days of get out your reader and they're again saturated with this. And from a young age, social media is part of their life, et cetera, et cetera. So even when last year or the year before, when we revised Beyond Images, our primary purpose was to embed more social media contexts and opportunities. So this 5 core concepts is a great framework to be able to talk about media.
And I think one of the key elements that Helen spoke to there is that particularly when it comes to media literacy in our schools, it's not a static curriculum. It has to keep changing. There's no choice but to keep changing it because the media keeps changing. when we wrote the original Beyond Images in 2008, social media was not what it was. Facebook existed.
No Instagram.
There was no Instagram.
Right? No Instagram.
There was no
Selfies.
Snapchat. There was no such thing as a selfie. And as we started reading through it, we had thought we'd written a pretty good curriculum, but we started to see all the gaps and all the areas that had changed in media at that point. In 2 years from now, there'll be changes as well. Yeah. So one of the key ideas as a teacher, and it's always been part of both of our practices, is that you really are responsive to the students in your classroom. You're responsive to what the kids are bringing into the classroom, what they're seeing outside the classroom, and that's the only way to really be able to get them to move forward in their critical thinking, because you have to be responsive to what they're bringing into the classroom. Yeah. They're already 4 or 5 steps ahead of us in most things anyway, so we have to be able to jump on board and meet them halfway to be able to break down the images that they're seeing, what they're hearing, and be able to really talk it through together.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is also another framework of analysis of media text. So it's text. In writing, we talk about the writing triangle as text, form, purpose, and audience. Like, what form are you going to use? What's your purpose for writing? And who's the audience? I'm not going to write a formal letter and start off yo for talking to the kids really about that purpose piece. In media, with the analysis, this is the media triangle where the text is in the middle. Here's the text. As we analyze it, we have to talk about what the text is, who is the audience, who is this intended for, and what are the production elements to that. So this as well is a great tool to analyze media as well, the media triangle.
And here really, our question is, how do we use media to teach an issue, and how do we use the issue to teach media? And it really is that circular piece where, what the students are bringing in needs to be analyzed, needs to be discussed, needs to be broken down for understanding. And then as they create new meaning out of that and take it out, then that also needs to be discussed too. So it's very much a cyclical process in our classrooms.
Absolutely, because media literacy is the strand, the curriculum strand that we have to teach and that we are accountable to even evaluation and to reporting on. But what we've seen time and time again is the way to enrich that curriculum is to use an issue like body image, like a multitude of issues, for example, and big ideas, in order to have for it to be the vehicle to drive the curriculum, right? We don't want to just have rote lessons that just talk about the media triangle randomly, non-connected. There needs to be meaningful, it needs to be connected, especially to the kids, not to just the lessons to each other. But that was our big question that you see on this slide. That was our big question as we were writing originally and even as we were revising as well, constantly keeping as body image as the issue, but then how do we use media to teach it and the issue to teach media?
Okay. So in terms of body image as a term, it often gets thrown around, but truly understanding what body image is and defining it is paramount to being able to do it justice in the classroom. So, in terms of body image, it really is one's own perception of their body, but also how one perceives others seeing their bodies. So it's not just what we think about our own bodies, it's how we think everybody else in the room sees us. And that is a very fluid concept. It's not static. Again, it's not, body image doesn't get formed when you're 2.5, 3, and it remains same throughout. It's very much a fluid concept, and it changes. It can change on a daily basis. It can change on a weekly basis. I think some days for myself, it changes on an hourly basis. But very much we need to understand not only how we view ourselves, and our bodies, how we perceive the people around us as viewing us. And we need to be aware of that with our students as well. So how do the students perceive themselves? How do they perceive others as seeing them? And then how do we use all of those experiences and all of those perceptions in our classroom to meet the students in the middle and to be able to share, some of our own experiences without sharing too much as a teacher. We have to be very cognizant that, we maintain that professional role with the students. But how do we share some of the experiences that we have had in our own lives in order to drive conversation, drive the learning, and encourage the students to feel safe to share their own experiences and move forward in some of their understanding and their critical thinking.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Couldn't have said it better, Heather.
There we go. All right.
So the next few slides, to be honest, again, we don't want to read this to you, but it's exactly what Heather just said, to be honest. And so you have it there in text when you receive the presentation. It's just something for you to refer to. And actually, the next slide is exactly what Heather was talking about. It's, I think, when I'm first climbing, getting aboard on this journey 17 years ago, was I always thought it was how I just saw myself. That's the other piece about how I perceive others was what actually made a difference around me changing my own perceptions, to be honest.
That's right. Okay. And when we take a look at some of the background and the history of body image, there's really, again, it's a multi-layered concept, but body image is formed not just through developmental stages, and we know that students, by the time they're reaching our kindergarten years, they've got a physical concept that's formed in their heads in terms of what their bodies look like. And then as the students start to get into school, they start to realize different gender and sex differences. And then we've got the puberty aspects developmentally when they start to get into the preteen and teen years. But there's also the huge influence of the social elements. So where, family plays a huge role in initial self-concept and development of body image and self-esteem. And then as students become school age, the school can have a huge impact on that in terms of messages that they hear at the school, the resources available in the school, the activities and opportunities that are afforded students in the schools. And then as our students get older and older, peers become one of the primary social influences, and media more so now than ever. Back in the early 80s when I was growing up, media was, okay, a few rock videos on MTV and much music. It's not 24/7 the way it is now. Our kids actually can never really get away from media. It follows them 24/7. And the same with school. There's actually, when we were growing up, there used to be an end of the school day. School ended at 3, ended at 3:30. The teen years for myself in high school were horrible. I couldn't wait to leave school every day at 3:30, get to my part-time job where I actually felt people liked me for who I was, and I was treated differently than how I was treated at the high school I attended. But nowadays, kids never get away from school because school is on their phones, on their tablets, on their computers. And that environment, that peer environment, stays with them. And so even when they're in their bedrooms at night, they're still a part of it. So there is no separation between peers, school, and the media anymore. It's just become one huge social influence. And it's something that we have to be very cognizant of.
And we believe as educators, it is our responsibility to tease that apart together with students. We cannot say that this is their reality and, oh, well, how do we then bring that into our classroom? And this is what we hope, again, always, that the Beyond Images curriculum helps to do that. in one form. So when we wrote the curriculum, when we put together the curriculum, and we had a third partner that we were writing with as well, in the first draft, we really talked about how to make it inclusive so that teachers didn't feel like this was an added, an extra, if you will. How do we embed this? How do we embed the curriculum, embed assessment and evaluation, embed a whole bunch of really meaningful teaching and learning strategies, so that teachers didn't feel like, oh my gosh, this is one more thing to do. Because while we say for students, there is a lot of pressure on them as they grow up. There's a lot of pressure. The reality is for us in the classroom as well as educators. I know now, having taught for 17 years, I constantly am reflecting back to what's different. Like why was and this isn't even like, I know I'm getting older and things are different. It's not, but I was able to do stuff and didn't feel so bogged down especially as a beginning teacher, where it's very easy to feel overwhelmed. And now I feel a sense of feeling overwhelmed. There's lots of initiatives and lots to deal with and handle, and teaching social skills in addition to academic pieces, social, emotional, etc. So we really wanted this to be an inclusive, integrated curriculum. And it really looks at, if you look on the left-hand side, the third point, this is really key, looking at a curriculum and an environment that is created that affirms and validates. Those two verbs right there is really, really important. Affirming and validating everyone involved. That includes us. Please, 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 as teachers, I always say, we need to remember that we are part of this team. It's not, like our passions, our styles, etc., and working together with the students. So putting students in the center doesn't mean that you ignore yourself. But the questions on the right are really, really critical. And these are the ones that we had with us as we put this together too. Who is present? Whose voices are absent? Even, a little bit further down, creating a classroom and a school climate that supports and welcomes. How do we do that? How do we honor the diversity in so many different ways, whether it be sexuality, race, culture, gender, etc. But what about the issue? Like, do we then talk about you're not allowed to have that snack at recess? It's unhealthy. Well, right away, that creates an environment that does not support and welcome diversity. And I have seen that over the years, point blank at students, chastising students for maybe what's in their lunch without a thought about maybe this is all that could be brought for lunch or all that could be afforded. And yes, Lunchables are not the best, but if there's a dollar sale at No Frills, and that's what a mummy is able to get, so that there at least is something, some fuel for them, then that's a piece we need to check in with as educators. So, McDonald's, sure, not the best, but you know what? It's a sometimes food. And so honoring that piece and really supporting that diversity needs to include the body image, the realm of body image as well as an equity issue and as a piece in the realm of diversity.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So we just have a few images here that have been taken from a variety of different ads, different social media outlets. 21 Day Fix is one that always jumps out at me there. So a variety of different slogans. These are great jump off pieces with students too, to get them to dissect what is being shared there. But one of the key elements that we need to as teachers before exploring body image and self-esteem with students is we have to do kind of a self-inventory of our own biases. What do we bring to the table? What have been our own experiences with body image? How do we see ourselves? How do we see others? what is the language that we use when we talk about ourselves? What is the language that we use when we talk about others? And ensuring that we kind of check those biases at the door as much as we can, but also acknowledge what the experiences are that we bring to the table. So, for myself with students, I have a long history with eating disorders. I continue to survive and challenge 2 eating disorders because I will never say I'm recovered, because I'm not. I constantly live with them. That's not information that needs to be shared with students. That's my own personal history with students. But what they do need to understand is that I am very cognizant of and very inclusive in the words I use, in the resources that I choose, in ensuring that there is the opportunity for students to do a variety of different activities, have a lot of different experiences at school, and that comes from some of my experiences as a child where I didn't feel included. That's okay to talk about. I didn't always feel safe. I didn't always feel included. I didn't always feel accepted or encouraged to be myself. And because of those experiences, I want to ensure that they feel included, that they feel safe, that this is a place that they can share, how they're feeling, what their experiences are, and they can let me know what they're looking for. So as teachers, we have to be careful that we always maintain that professional stance, which can be a challenge when it's such a personal topic. And but we always have to remember that we are the teacher in the classroom and not the friend, not the counselor, and not the fixer of problems. So sometimes when we get into discussions with students around body image, there can be sharing of very personal information from students. There can be students who will disclose disordered eating or self-harming behaviors. And as teachers, we do need to be aware that we are teachers. We're not therapists. We're not counselors. We can't solve the problem, but what we can say to the students is that they're safe for having shared information with us, and that we can help them get the help they need. And then, follow through whatever processes are in your school board, in terms of reaching out for support, through your admin, through social work, through a variety of, health departments, etc. But that we can't and we don't own their problem, and we don't take it on to be the fixer of them.
And this is really key, and we really strongly encourage anyone who is working with students to really reflect and challenge their biases, because the language that we choose to use can perpetuate something very negative and really sometimes send students spiraling, if you will. So even talking about kids can hear everything. I always say, like, you might think you're in the staff room and no one's around, and if that door is open, there sometimes are ears, like, you just never know. So talking about your summer body, right? Talking about, I shouldn't really have this. I've heard this, and to be honest with you, I've heard educators talk like this right with students in front of. It's not staff room conversation. I have respectfully challenged my wonderful colleagues that I love, and I do so out of love, not out of not out of the fat person that wants to perpetuate who I am, for example, in my soapbox. I believe strongly. To stand in front of my class and say that I love myself at the larger size that I am, and using the word fat with them, is astronomical, their reactions to that. And don't use that word. No, you're not. You're wonderful, Miss V. And it's like, no, but I am still big and I am fat and I own it and I love it. Every lump and curve and everything. They don't hear that. They don't hear that. We don't hear that. And I'm not saying I'm some hero or I'm not. I humbly say this. But I think what we choose, the conversations we choose to have, can really make a difference. If we do a lesson, and I've seen this over the years, of healthy and unhealthy foods, and we cut out, everyone bring our flyers from home and do the Venn diagram, if you will. We love the Venn in schools, right? But let's do that, and let's do this dichotomy. That language is saying that if at home I only have this, then something is wrong with me. So if we go back to those core concepts, that's the construction of the message right there. So if we talk about it as always foods and sometimes foods, I'm sorry, McDonald's is a sometimes food. Cookies, cake, all those things that we think of as unhealthy, we need to change that. If I want that piece of cake, I'm going to have it. If I'm going to have the whole cake and maybe two, there's a problem there, right? But it's the same thing if I have a large bag of carrots. I shouldn't be eating that whole bag of carrots either. So really getting kids to think about moderation and sometimes foods, always foods, right? And really challenging. And this is tough because we are immersed in it just as much. And the diet, come on, it's January. A place that I go to that I've fallen in love with, going for yoga and stuff. And one of the things that the woman who owns this wonderful place says is, "Oh, January, it's packed. The classes are going to be packed." Yeah, because everyone wants to go back to Zumba and everything to lose weight, if you will, right? All these resolutions, we're in that time right now. All of the posts on my Facebook wall around what did I get for Christmas? The memes and all of that. Why? Right? We are so lucky to be able to say that we are able to eat so much around the holidays, for example. There are many people suffering without family, let's say, or loss of loved ones, or not able to eat at all. Yet we're posting memes that mock that maybe, and really, you don't really put on weight just from having one big meal. You're not going to suddenly get fat, let's be honest. But it's this language that we really, really feel strongly as educators we need to start challenging.
And it can be really tough, especially if you're the only teacher in the school who's challenging it. And it can be, I think I can speak for Helen and I, we've both been that teacher in the staff room who have challenged our colleagues, when everybody's sitting at the table and people are picking apart each other's food and say, well, why are you eating that? Why are you not eating this? Why did you bring this? And it can be really tough. They're not easy conversations to have, especially with colleagues. And you have to choose what works best for you. But modeling appropriate behavior and appropriate language for students is key. Modeling it for teachers. I have been a teacher who has stepped away from staff room conversations to say, I'm not interested in this. I just want to enjoy my lunch. Challenging people for some of the comments that are made, when there's been in the past, Weight Watchers clubs at school, and all the teachers walk into the library on the Friday morning and everybody steps on the scale, and by 9:10 every kid in the school knows which teacher lost the most weight that week. That's a culture in our schools that needs to change. We see a lot of push coming through on, and I hate to use it, but the other isms. We see a lot of push coming through for inclusive language, for appropriate language, to discuss race and culture and religion. Sizeism is the one ism that is still okay to make fun of. And it's still the one that's open for the pickings. On television, it's still the dumb fat guy is always the father who's the big doofus in every sitcom, and it's still
the really thin one's the airhead. Let's say, right?
The thin blonde is always the airhead. There are so many stereotypes, and so the only way for us to start changing that is to start doing it in our classrooms.
And the cross section between this equity issue and others is incredible. We could talk about facial features, hair, right? We can talk about size not only as large and thin, even as height, for example. I've had students in grade 7, 8, boys who tend to, grow taller, let's say, later in high school, who feel horrible for being the short kid in the class, for example. But there's all these cross sections that really lend itself to wonderful conversations with the students. As we say, just about challenging our colleagues, for example, please know that it's done so. We're not sitting there yelling at people or mocking.
Please don't do that.
We're not doing. It's having what we call all the time courageous conversations. We need to have them with each other. So within this curriculum that we have in front of the, Beyond Images, it's working with students, but working with each other. So this is not about judging. It's about having the conversation, having the conversations and loving each other enough to also feel safe. And hopefully we all work in environments where that's true, where we feel safe to have those conversations, because we need to challenge them. We can't allow this to keep this cycle to keep being perpetuated.
Okay, so we're going to try and jump into the body image curriculum now, so that we can give you a little bit of a taste and highlight of what is involved at each of the grade levels. And we're going to try and do that in the next 20 minutes and allow for some questions if and as. And certainly, please feel free to type your questions if anything comes up as we're going along.
Please know, just before we jump in, this is very purposeful, the way our webinar has been. We didn't want to spend an hour just going through and this lesson. As you can see on this, it's free. Yeah. Thank you, NEDIC. Love you. Thank you. NEDIC, Dove, all the partners. It's free for everyone to download. So we don't want to insult your intelligence by just going through. It's the conversation before this point is very purposeful on our end, because these are some of the pieces that aren't necessarily written within the curriculum, to really talk about your own biases, to really understand who you are, your place, what you believe in, etc. So we don't mean to just we're not just going to quickly skim. We're going to give you a little taste of each of the 5 grade levels, and we wrote each with a theme or a big idea in mind, and then the 5 lessons flow from there, if you will. So as we talked about inclusive curriculum, then we worked from a sub-theme outside that connected to body image, and usually coming from media literacy as a topic. So,
and certainly, at each grade level, we tried to take a look at what the Ontario curriculum and other curriculums look at, but weren't tied only to the Ontario curriculum. So while there are elements there that connect and certainly make it easy for you to get your assessment pieces, or to rationalize if anybody were to challenge you about using the curriculum pieces. The intent really is that there are some global themes at each grade level that go beyond the constraints of the Ontario curriculum, to really target what's happening socially, emotionally, mentally for students at each grade level, and to allow for some flexibility that grade 4 doesn't have to just be used in grade 4. If there's a great activity in grade 4, you can use it with grade 5s, grade 6s. You can use it with your grade 3s. Your students, what the kids need, and it's there for you to use. We want you to use it.
You're amazing. Thank you for saying it, because there are a lot of combined grades. Yeah. So please don't think, should I teaching grade 7, 8? Sometimes I do the grade 7 one. I've used the grade 7 for everyone. Sometimes we go to the 8. Sometimes I dip into the 8 and take a little bit, go back to the 4. Please don't think that this is the grade 4. The curriculum expectations will be different. However, the beautiful language curriculum, there's a wonderful continuum from grade 1 to 8. So it lends itself to that.
That's right. Okay. I'm just going to, there's a question that's come up here. I just couldn't quite read it. More of the research. Okay. Thank you for the question. We're interested in hearing more of the research behind this. Is there somewhere we can find about the resources behind the development of this program? You're looking at them.
No.
I don't think that there's anything formally written up on the NEDIC site. There are some backgrounders that do come as part of each of the grade theme or grade units. That gives some of the background around body image and self-esteem development, and key messages as parents, as teachers. So there's certainly some background information there, and there would be other information available on the NEDIC site as well, if you're looking at getting more into some of the background research.
Yeah. Also within the lessons where it's relevant, there are.
And we've tried to put in some links to research. Or key ideas. There's a teacher message at the beginning of each of the lessons that kind of puts the framework around what the intent of each lesson is. So certainly there some of that information is embedded in the program.
Mm-hmm. We hope that answers your question. Grade 4, do you want to tackle?
Sure. Mm-hmm. So in grade 4, the key themes, as you can see there, is really looking at friendship. We know that by the time our kids are getting into grade 3, grade 4, their peers are a huge social influence for the good and for the bad. So giving them the opportunity to really start to define who they are, how they present themselves, how they understand, how they perceive themselves, how they perceive people, and how they can become good friends. So that is very much some of the key themes that were involved in the grade 4. And we tried to tie it through a number of different media opportunities for them to express themselves using blogs, poetry, rap, and just a number of different opportunities for the students to really express themselves.
Beautiful.
Okay, moving on to grade 5.
Grade 5 looks at advertisements specifically and looking at the purpose of advertisements. So looking at PSA, public service announcements, and looking at how we can analyze public service announcements, for example, but also how we can create them to share positive messages that might hopefully help ourselves and others strengthen self-image and self-esteem, right? So really looking at the messages and examining the voices critically, and then delivering our messages of our own as well. So through art pieces, letter writing, etc., examining, as we see here, magazine ads, even slogans. We can analyze and create media in this way. And that was really the focus of advertisements in grade 5, is the media focus.
In grade 6, we took a look at some of our students becoming leaders in schools. Depending on how your school board is set up or how schools are set up, in many of our schools, grade 6s are the oldest students in a school and are often put into those leadership roles. So we wanted to give the opportunity for teachers, if they did have students at that grade level, to be able to kind of capitalize on that leadership opportunity. We did that through the use of magazines, while I actually was challenged on this recently about why are we still using magazines with students? Do kids actually read magazines anymore? I challenge that person quite wholeheartedly. If you walk into any Indigo or any grocery store, that magazines are still a huge part of our life. And there is a whole, $1 million industry where, a lot of the magazine conglomerates have actually targeted our preteens and teens. So, we've got Teen Vogue, we've got Teen Cosmopolitan, all these things. We've got all the gaming magazines that are targeted at our boys. sports magazines.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of imaging that are in those that our kids are seeing. So at the grade 6 level, we really dive into magazines. We analyze everything from the articles that are in them to the advertisements, etc. And then the students get the opportunity to actually create their own magazine layout that would promote positive body image and self-esteem to children in the younger grades. So it gives them that opportunity to take that leadership role and market something where they're responsible for the messaging that some of the younger kids in the school are seeing.
In grade 7, we really look at appearance ideals and this notion of beauty and what is beautiful, and redefining those ideals, and smashing them to bits, so to speak. Creating counter narratives is a huge piece through these 3 questions that you see here on the screen. Like, who defines what is beautiful? Who defines how, what is represented to us? Who decides those things? And how can we decide? So in terms of, what Heather said about the magazines, can we create an online zine? Can we create a space online even? Can we, even from the posts that, I talk with my 7/8 a lot about even what you choose to post, for example, can become a part of this narrative or counter narrative. And so it really looks at that piece about redefining that together.
Great. And I know that we do have a question down here. We're just going to finish up the kind of our summary here, and then we'll address the question. Yeah. So thank you. If you can just hold on for a moment. In grade 8, again, it's an opportunity to hopefully consolidate some of the learning that the students have been doing. In our ideal world, our students would have gone through all of these curriculums, grade 4 through 8, but even at the standalone, students having the opportunity to use the grade 8 curriculum, it's really developing those critical analysis tools and helping them understand their digital footprint and how they project themselves to the world. So giving the opportunity to do some critical analysis around some of the most popular stars, what do stars and celebrities put out there, positive and negative? How does that impact them? Certainly we can see with, there's never a lack of examples to use. If you put on Entertainment Tonight or any of the star related TV shows. And then because our students are grade 8 at this point and they're about to head into high school, many of them are starting to look at getting jobs, getting out into the world. The opportunity for them to actually create an online portfolio or an online resume, because as we know, employers look at our online footprint now. It is quite common for prospective employers to Google prospective employees and see what is on their Facebook page, what is on their Snapchat, Instagram, and ask them about it. And so, having the students understand that what they're putting out digitally is their representation to the world. So how can they be in the driver's seat and control what their own message is? Okay. Yeah. So just before we go forward, there was a question around whether there's any inclusion of lessons, taking a look at diet talk and healthy foods, or is the curriculum solely about body image and self-esteem? It was a very concentrated and concerted effort to not include nutritional work, talk about foods in the curriculum. We very strongly believe, NEDIC very firmly believes, ourselves as writers and many of the researchers who are behind this very firmly believe that there should not be talk about food in our classrooms, that that should come out of the curriculum. Bottom line, I could go on for hours about how I think that our health curriculum needs to move away from the labeling of foods and diving into nutritional values and having kids understand how many grams of sugar and sodium, et cetera, are in the minute pieces that are in front of them. It's such an abstract concept. We don't understand it as adults. Why are we asking 8-year-olds to do it? So it was a very much concerted effort to move away from a focus on foods and to look at healthy living as a holistic view. What are all the different pieces that go together to make us healthy? What do we do for our mind? What do we do for our bodies? What do we do for our souls? Rather than focusing on how many calories or fat grams are going into our bodies.
And here are the layers that Heather was just talking about as well.
Yeah. And the other thing is that there are some great resources out there if you do need to teach that, because we understand, we can say what we want. But as educators, we know that there is an accountability piece as teachers to teach the health curriculum. So there are some great resources out there. OFIA has great documents out there. The dairy farmers used to have some great resources out there. Unfortunately, they've removed their funding as of January 1st. And so Teach Nutrition no longer exists. I discovered that last week. But there are some great resources out there for teachers to use that focus on nutrition if they need to get that specific. This is intended to be the affective domain, the piece of the curriculum that was missing for so long. How do we address the social and emotional elements of our students, not the physical locomotion and not the nutrition?
So it definitely is a body image and self-esteem curriculum. And I think the other piece to add on there is, just as we wrap up, is that even within the ministry and all of our different boards within Ontario, and I'm going to assume, to be honest, across our country, is this real concentrated effort to looking at mental health and well-being as well. And so as you look at this image of this apple and all the puzzle pieces, even talking with kids about what does it mean to be healthy? What does health at every size mean? What does, there's great bulletins that, one of my favorite ones is the health at every size one. There's lots out there around that. But what are all the different pieces to creating a healthy person, mind, body, and soul, as Heather said. So it's not just our outer appearance. Our outer appearance could seem, quote unquote, be perfect, whatever that means. However, we might be mentally, not doing so well, not as healthy, or etc. Our emotional state, our mental state, etc. So really talking with the kids, what does it mean to be healthy even? So talking in that vein. Just to wrap up, we want you to please remember this as well. We want our students to remember this. Okay? You're not a size. You're not a weight. You're not a color. You're not an age. You're not a trophy or a doll. You're not stupid. You're not an image. You're not an advert. And so we leave this with you. You are wonderful and special and incredible as you are. So go to the mirror and tell yourself, I love you. Go to the mirror and challenge yourself in this journey as you work with students within this curriculum or beyond. Let's create a space in our world where we can feel strong and secure as we are, how we are. So please remember this yourself. We want to leave you with that.
And the very fact that you chose to spend an hour of your evening tonight with us means that you are the right people to be taking this on and to be championing this very important element. And we hope that you will continue to do so. Helen and I are both very much open to being contacted. So at the end of the presentation, both of our emails are there. We're more than happy to share what we can, in terms of resources that we have or direction for where you could get further information. So please, don't hesitate to contact us if you would like. And thank you all for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Great.
Cheers.